Jerry spoke with confidence. I was the one who built that house, so it rightfully belongs to me. You'll need to move out. Given that we're separating and considering your part-time income, I doubt you'll manage on your own. He let out a laugh as he presented her with the divorce papers. My name is Nancy, and I'm 35 years old. I recently started a part-time job at a local supermarket. I met Jerry at work 4 years ago, and we both decided to quit our jobs when we got married. Initially, I was keen to continue working, but Jerry preferred that I stay at home, so I became a full-time housewife. Even though I miss working, I eventually found myself longing to return to work. After many discussions, I managed to secure a part-time position. Jerry and I have been trying to start a family, but haven't had any luck yet. I also really wanted a cat, but Jerry dislikes cats, so I had to let go of that idea. Initially, Jerry was content with me staying home, but he became increasingly upset when I started working part-time. He began to nitpick everything at home. You went to work again today, huh? It looks like the house is getting messier. Are the clothes all wrinkled in the laundry? You're not keeping up with the housework, Jerry would complain. That wasn't true. I had finished all the cleaning before going to work, and the laundry was done perfectly. What are you talking about? I'm doing everything just as I used to. It's clean, can't you see? I responded, frustrated by his accusations. He even complained about the meals. Fried chicken again? Can't you cook something different? He grumbled. I didn't even make fried chicken that often and tried to keep our meals varied, especially since I knew it was his favorite. I put effort into making your favorite fried chicken, and I make a variety of dishes, I defended myself. But every time I tried to explain, he just got angrier. Are you saying you're too busy because of your part-time job? You're just pretending to be busy. Don't act like your job is important when it barely pays anything, he scolded. You're only working because you're selfish. Your earnings were fine to begin with. Make sure you do the housework properly. Don't make excuses about not having time. It's embarrassing to work so hard for such a low wage. Jerry berated me, insisting that he wanted me to be a housewife so people wouldn't think we were struggling financially. His words were harsh and hurtful, reflecting his dissatisfaction with my desire to work. Jerry constantly belittled my part-time job, boasting about how his earnings were more than enough to cover our expenses. Being subjected to such cruel words every day was unbearable and often left me furious. However, an opportunity to step away came when we decided to visit Jerry's parents, whom we hadn't seen in a while. Despite my ongoing annoyance with Jerry, I welcomed the change of scenery. After a few hours' drive, we arrived at his mother's house, where she lives alone. She greeted us warmly, and after a dinner she prepared, Jerry left to play slot machines, leaving me to wash the dishes with my mother-in-law. Her demeanor suddenly changed. She wasn't as calm as before, and her face grew serious. As I made coffee, she sat down next to me with a grave look. Nancy, according to Jerry, you're working part-time. Why do you need to work when he has a good job? Also, he says you're neglecting the housework because of your job, she stated, catching me off guard. That's not true. I'm managing everything just fine, I replied, surprised by her sudden confrontation. Oh, my mother-in-law continued, a look of disbelief on her face. I've heard from Jerry about how poorly you handle the housework. There's no point in lying. He's been dealing with it all by himself. He's exhausted from work, and sadly he has to come home to a messy house. You're not cooking proper meals, are you? Quit that part-time job. Your workplace won't miss you. They can find someone else. Your job is to take care of the house. Focus on supporting Jerry properly from now on, and don't embarrass yourself as Jerry's wife. Her words reflected deep-seated traditional beliefs. She had married right after school, never worked a day, and fully embraced her role as a full-time housewife. Jerry was raised in a home where the wife's duty was strictly domestic, influencing his expectations of our marriage. However, my mother-in-law's harsh words deeply wounded me. At my part-time job, I felt supported and valued, a stark contrast to what I experienced at home. It was a positive environment where I felt appreciated and relied upon. Hearing such dismissive and demeaning talk about myself, suggesting I was useless, was heartbreaking. My efforts at work and home were significant, and it pained me to be so misunderstood and undervalued. Learning that my mother-in-law, who knew nothing about my job, had been fed lies about me by Jerry was a shock. Despite my efforts to maintain our home meticulously alongside my part-time job, I was disheartened to discover that Jerry had been disparaging me behind my back. I was working harder than ever, conscious of the demands of Jerry's job and trying my best to support him. However, overhearing him and his mother speak poorly of me over the phone was a bitter pill to swallow. Initially, I found it hard to accept and felt deeply hurt. In the following days, as I grappled with these revelations, my thoughts turned to my father. Since my mother's passing, he had been living alone in our family home, which was a fair distance away. I hadn't seen him recently due to my busy schedule, but needing some comfort, I decided to call him. Usually he answered promptly, but that day the phone rang longer than usual, heightening my worries until he finally picked up. "Nancy, it's been a while. Are you well?" he asked in his calm voice, which immediately brought me some relief, though tears welled up in my eyes. "What happened? It took you a long time to pick up. If you're busy, I can call back later," I managed to say. "No, I'm sorry," he replied. "I recently fell down the stairs and hurt my back. I can't move around much now, but don't worry about me. I'll be okay soon. By the way, what's going on? Is everything okay?" His admission shocked me. My dad, who had always been so active, had suffered a fall and injured his back. "No, I'm okay. Just make sure you take care of yourself and get better soon. I'll come to visit you soon, so wait for me," I assured him. "Yeah, I'm okay," he said. But his situation lingered in my mind. Now considered elderly, his recovery might be slow, and the risk of further injury was a real concern. The thought of him navigating the steep stairs in our old family home, especially the tall steps at the entrance and in the bathroom, made me worry even more. The fear of him getting seriously hurt was too much to bear. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I started to think how beneficial it would be to live closer to him, to be there when he needed help, or simply to ensure he was safe. This idea, once a mere wish, now seemed like a necessary plan to pursue. Realizing the urgency of the situation, I decided to build a safer, more accessible home for my dad nearby. I had some funds that came from managing apartments left to me by my grandfather. Originally intended for my dad's use, he had transferred them to my name as a precaution, advising me to keep them from my husband. All the rental income had been saved up over the years, and I planned to use this money to construct a new home for my father. The thought of providing such a meaningful gift filled me with joy, especially since I felt I hadn't been able to support him as much as I wanted in the past. Building the house would be a costly endeavor, and I couldn't keep it a secret from Jerry. Nervously, I brought up the topic, worried about his reaction. To my surprise, he seemed understanding at first. "I understand it makes sense to get him a new house considering his age. If you think you can handle it, go for it. Just don't expect me to help if things get tough," he said. His dismissive tone stung, but I chose not to retaliate. Avoiding an argument made things simpler, and I immediately started looking for a reliable contractor and initiated the construction process. However, it seemed like Jerry wasn't truly on board with the idea. He didn't voice his displeasure, but his silence was uncharacteristic. Jerry usually spoke his mind. My suspicions were confirmed when a shocking discovery at the bank left me reeling. I found out that $5,000 had been withdrawn from our account, all at once. I couldn't recall authorizing such a large transaction, and there was only one other person who could have made it. That night, I confronted Jerry. "I noticed today at the bank that $5,000 was missing from our living expenses. Do you know anything about this?" I asked. Jerry's response was arrogant and dismissive. "I gave it to my mother. You said you were building a house, so you must have been saving up somewhere, right? $5,000 isn't a big deal." I was astonished by his rationale. "Why would you give her that money?"
Your mother isn't struggling, and that money was meant for our daily needs. It's not fair to take such a significant amount without discussing it with me first."
His casual misuse of our funds and lack of communication was not only irresponsible but also deeply unfair. The situation highlighted a growing rift over financial priorities and respect within our marriage. During our heated argument, Jerry retorted sharply, "What do you know about my mother? She said she needed help. What's wrong with a son helping his mother? Besides, that money was earned by me. How I use it is none of your business. If it bothers you, try earning as much as I do with your part-time job. You can't say anything now, can you? Don't ever complain about what I do again." With that, he stormed out of the room. I had always trusted Jerry, despite his harsh demeanor, and wished he had discussed the matter with me first. Perhaps there could have been a way to help his mother without sparking such a dispute. Did he think I would object, or did he simply not trust me? Our marriage, which should have brought us closer, seemed only to be driving a wedge between us. Jerry saw no issue with using the money without my consent, and the next day he acted as if nothing had happened, heading to work after breakfast as usual. I remained silent, not wanting to ignite another argument, but I was left with a lingering sense of unease. Meanwhile, the construction of the new house for my dad was completed despite the troubles at home. The construction company was incredibly supportive, and I managed to create a beautiful home for him. As moving day approached, I hired movers to help pack his belongings, ensuring he wouldn't strain himself during the move. With just 3 weeks left until he could move in, I was brimming with excitement at the thought of doing something so special for him. However, as we discussed the moving plans, Jerry dropped a bombshell. "Hey, that house isn't for your dad. It's going to be for my mom. I have the right to decide who lives in the house I helped build, so it's going to be my mom," he declared firmly. I was stunned and responded in a mix of shock and defiance. "I built that house. It's for my dad. There's no way you, with your part-time job, could have built it. It's my money that paid for it, so don't act so entitled." It seemed Jerry genuinely believed that it was his money that had financed the house. When we had initially discussed building the house, he appeared supportive of the idea, but now it was clear he had always intended for it to benefit his mother, not my dad. This revelation was deeply unfair, and now I found myself having to prove that the funds used were indeed mine, a situation I had hoped to avoid. Realizing I needed to be honest about the rental income I had secretly saved, I decided to come clean with Jerry. "You're making up stories just because you want the house for yourself. If you're going to lie, at least make it believable," he scoffed, completely disbelieving me. He stormed off, leaving me bewildered, but I knew I had to help him understand the truth. When Jerry returned, his anger had visibly escalated. "You tried to trick me saying you built that house. You're a liar. That house is mine because I helped build it. You need to leave even if we break up. I don't think you can survive on your part-time salary," he spat out. His words left me speechless. The house was the result of my hard work and savings, and his demand for me to leave was shocking. "Sign this and get out tonight," he laughed cruelly, slamming divorce papers on the table before heading to his room. The papers were already filled out on his part. After constantly demeaning me, presenting the divorce papers like that was a new low. Perhaps he thought that threatening divorce would pressure me into caving and letting his mother move into the house. However, little did he know, I had enough money to live independently. This was the final straw. I signed the papers, submitted them, packed my bags, and left for my dad's house. My dad was surprised to see me arrive with so much luggage all of a sudden, but welcomed me warmly. After explaining everything, he patted my back and said, "You've been through a lot. You can stay with me in the new house. That would make me happy." Moving day arrived, and everything went smoothly with my presence. We successfully moved in without any issues. I found it strange that my ex-husband hadn't reached out after the dramatic scene claiming the house was his, but I chose not to dwell on it.
wanting to move past thinking about someone I was now divorced from. However, a few days after settling into our new home with my father, something unbelievable happened. There was a commotion outside, and when I looked out the window, I saw a big moving truck parked outside. Confused, I rushed outside to talk to the movers and figure out what was happening. It turned out that the customer was my ex-husband, attempting to take possession of the house he had claimed was not mine.
It became clear that Jerry and his mother planned to move into the house where my father and I were already living. Given our recent divorce, Jerry was practically a stranger to me now, and their attempt to forcefully take over the house was unsettling. The thought of Jerry's aggressive behavior instilled a deep fear in me. I quickly explained the situation to the confused movers and asked them to halt their work. Then, I turned to my father and called the police. I explained everything to them, and they confirmed that since the house was legally mine and Jerry and I were divorced, he had no right to enter the property. His presence there would be considered trespassing. When Jerry and his mother arrived, they were met by the police and were visibly panicked. The reality of the situation seemed to finally hit Jerry. Amidst the chaos of his mother's distress and the police's interrogation, he lost his composure and shouted, "What's going on? Why can't I live in this house?" Seeing him in such a state, I realized that dealing with someone like him was no longer an option. To protect my father and myself, I provided the police with crucial evidence. Thankfully, the situation was brought under control with the police's intervention. Later, I learned that Jerry faced severe consequences for his actions. In his determination to move into the house, he canceled his apartment lease and sold his mother's house, leaving them with nowhere to go. The movers charged him a breach of contract fee, and with a truck full of belongings, Jerry and his mother found themselves stranded on the street. The final piece of evidence I gave to the police was footage of the verbal abuse Jerry had subjected me to. Unable to endure his abusive language any longer, I installed surveillance cameras to record everything. The footage clearly showed me diligently handling housework while enduring his harsh treatment. This evidence was pivotal in demonstrating the extent of his mistreatment and supported my case against him. While Jerry continued to hurl unreasonable abuse at me, I used the evidence I had collected to press my case further. I hired a lawyer and took legal action against him, ultimately securing a settlement. The costs from the moving chaos and the settlement severely depleted the funds he had obtained from selling his mother's house, as well as his savings. As a result, Jerry and his mother ended up living in a rundown apartment. News of Jerry's troubles quickly spread at his workplace. His colleagues, recognizing the flaws in his character, began distancing themselves. Now, Jerry is isolated and looked down upon by everyone at the company. As for me, life has taken a much brighter turn. I finally adopted a cat, which has brought me immense joy. My father's back has fully healed, and we are now planning a trip with the cat. I also used the settlement money to open a shop specializing in cat products. Although the start was challenging and there were setbacks, the business has steadily improved and the shop is now thriving. Every day is peaceful and enjoyable, and I'm truly happy with the new direction my life has taken. I never imagined that standing up for my father would lead to such positive changes, but I'm convinced it was the right decision. Recently, there has been another happy development. A man who frequently visits my shop, always chatting warmly and being kind to both people and cats, has become a special part of my life. We've made plans to go for a drive together. I'm looking forward to living freely and embracing the new happiness that is on the horizon.